There's a bill coming up for consideration in the Tennessee legislature. It's being hustled by the Family Action Council of Tennessee. Fact. A young man, handsome young man, named Jacob Rogers killed himself in Tennessee. He was a teenager. He was bullied mercilessly and relentlessly, which is how the Friends of Jesus do things. He was thus bullied because he was perceived to be gay. This story goes back to December the 7th of the year just past. WSMV-TV, Nashville, reporting. Students at a local school are grieving a classmate. Friends say the young man took his own life because he couldn't take any more bullying. And they say school officials knew about the torment, but didn't do enough to stop it. Friends say that kids bullied Jacob Rogers at Cheatham County Central High School for the past 4 years, but in the past few months it had become so bad he had dropped out of school, and Wednesday he ended his life. Kaylin Mooningham was Jacob's friend. She said he started coming home his senior year saying, "I don't want to go back. Everyone's so mean. They call me a faggot. They call me gay, a queer." He was ignored. Kaylin went on to say, "Jacob told me no one was helping him. He constantly was going to guidance." She said no one would listen and stand up for him. She said it just doesn't have to make sense. How many kids have to die before Cheatham does something? She was his friend. He lived with his grandmother. She was his primary caretaker. She found a couple of notes that Jacob left for her. In those notes, Jacob left passwords to his email and his phone so investigators could determine why he chose to kill himself. As for Cheatham Central, says WSMV, counselors will be on hand again Thursday for grieving classmates. Nothing there about counselors being on hand for the ones who would be the Christians, who would be celebrating his death. And just as Rick Santorum will ride the body of a dead fetus, will flog and flail the corpse of his grandfather, will dredge up and hound the remains of Ronald Reagan, these filthy monsters from the Family Action Council of Tennessee are firmly astride the neck, the dead neck of Jacob Rogers. They are, in fact, promoting something in the Tennessee legislature. They're on that hill. They're on that hill overlooking the Cumberland River in Nashville. HB 1153. It's similar to a bill that was recently proposed up in Michigan. The law speaks to creating a hostile educational environment and how you're not supposed to do that. How children should have not just the opportunity and the ability, but the right in pursuing the education they are guaranteed under state and federal law, not to be tortured and tormented. Well, here's the language of the bill. Creating a hostile educational environment shall not be construed to include discomfort and unpleasantness that can accompany the expression of a viewpoint or belief that is unpopular, not shared by other students, or not shared by teachers or school officials. The policy shall not be construed or interpreted to infringe upon the First Amendment rights of students and shall not prohibit their expression of religious, philosophical, or political views, provided that such expression does not include a threat of physical harm to a student or damage to a student's property. Got to get that little bit of libertarianism in there, their property. Well, nobody necessarily threatened physical harm to Jacob Rogers. Nobody damaged his property. There's no threat of physical harm in subjecting a young man for 4 long years to derisive cries of, "Faggot! What are you doing, faggot? Where are you going tonight, faggot?" Oh, shucks, no. Those are just words of, what is it here? Expression of religious, philosophical, or political views, because everybody knows, you can look right there in the Gospel of Mark, and it says, "And Jesus did look upon an effeminate man in the crowd and said, 'Hey, faggot, you're going to hell.'" It's right there in the Bible. In the state of Tennessee, they are actually proposing, with no reference to the Magna Carta, mind you, they're actually proposing a bill that would shield people who torture their fellow students to death. And you know what? Nobody in the mainstream for-profit media will ask Rich Santorum how he feels about such a bill, but you know what? He'd be all for it, because he doesn't want any of those children to be prisoners of conscience. Because they should have the right, if Jesus tells them to call Jacob Rogers a faggot until he kills himself, then Jesus obviously wanted Jacob Rogers dead. Here endeth the lesson.